You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. LSU is on the practice field Thursday morning to open up spring drills. I mean, year 2 of the Brian Kelly era. The preparation officially begins tomorrow. Wilson Alexander of The Advocate. It never gets old. Good enough to join us for a couple minutes here. How are you, dude?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing really well. Let's start. So you got an opportunity to speak with Brian Kelly here recently?
Yes, we had a one-on-one over at the football ops building yesterday afternoon.
How would you describe, so covering Brian Kelly year 1, which when he was hired really was a whirlwind, just getting the roster and everything together, going through year 1. How would you describe your general opinion, take, feel around Brian Kelly here as he starts in year 2?
It's kind of funny. At the end of our interview yesterday, we sort of joked about how quiet the offseason's been. And it just shows, I think, the difference between year 1 and year 2. Because like you said, that first year last year was all about bringing in new people and getting to know everybody and resetting culture and habits. And it was like a whirlwind was a great way to put it. And this year has been so much more calm because we've only had the one staff change. Obviously, there was roster turnover that's sort of typical for an offseason, especially at this era of college football with the transfer portal. But there's just so much more is set now. And now Brian Kelly said because all that stuff is kind of in place, and while they have to continue to work on habits and standards and that kind of stuff, this spring is much more about actual football and skill development and things that while they were working on last year wasn't the sole focus.
Let's talk about some of the personnel things. I know you went through with Brian Kelly some of the injuries, guys who aren't going to participate in spring. Of them, what seems most significant?
Let's see. Oh, man. Most significant in what way would you say?
I don't know. I'd leave that open to you. Like for a guy that maybe isn't going to participate in spring, that is there an injury that's more significant, or some of them you maybe felt like needed some of the reps that isn't going to have that opportunity? Yeah,
in terms of injury significance, I don't know if anybody stands out above the rest because Brian Kelly said that all of them are projected to be back by summer workouts. So it's not like somebody at this stage is going to miss week 1 against Florida State. But one person that does stand out to me in terms of opportunity with reps is Charles Turner, because this was already, as we know, a big position at center that LSU was a little bit in flux. Even though Turner held his own, there's always been those questions about his size. And now Marlon Martinez looked pretty good in the reps that he got right at the end of the year, particularly the Citrus Bowl, when Turner was kind of only played one series. And so now Marlon Martinez is probably going to get the entire spring at center. And, LSU might rotate some other guys through there, but he's going to have a really good chance to show what he can do at center. And Charles is going to have to then come back in the preseason and kind of hold back onto a spot. And I think it'll be a really interesting competition there. And then everybody else, Deuce Chestnut would be, I think, maybe another one to look at because of the competition at cornerback, he being one of those guys that comes in. But there is that caveat of him already having started for 2 years at Syracuse. He maybe doesn't need all the reps that somebody else might at cornerback, but at the same time, he's another new face in a very crowded position that has yet to be figured out.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the offensive line for a second because you also broke the news yesterday about the Maryland transfer, Lunsford, who's coming in. Can you give us a little background on how that all came together?
Well, LSU, of course, has been looking for an interior offensive line transfer really all offseason. It started with Jake Renfro from Cincinnati. It offered Ja'Kai Clark from Miami, but neither of them picked LSU. And then when Mason Lunsford entered the transfer portal, LSU offered, within a couple of weeks, he entered back just in February. They had him on campus over the weekend, and Sunday morning before he left, he went to the coach's offices with Brad Davis and Brian Kelly and signed there before he left. Mason told me last night that it was really about, he felt like there was a commitment to winning between the players and the staff, that there was a real chance to win a championship. He's got 2 years of eligibility left, and while Mike Locksley has gotten Maryland to a more competitive place than it used to be, certainly isn't where LSU is at. We're going to compete for SEC titles and so maybe even a college football playoff berth this year. So he wanted to be a part of that. He doesn't mind the competition, and he's looking forward to getting here in the summer.
That's okay. I was going to ask. So he's not going through spring.
No, he's not. Anybody who is signed at this point, it's too late for them to get in for spring ball. So he'll be here in the summer.
Okay, I had thought, maybe my assumption was that he had already enrolled. But he was just here this weekend and then committed, signed this weekend. So he'll be here for summer workouts. Wilson Alexander is with us on Twitter at it's Whalesander _. It's WH Alexander. Spells out Whalesander, which is pretty. I don't know. We laugh about that all the time, Wilson. I think it's funny. At WH Alexander _. Y'all give Wilson a follow. Okay, that's offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball. I think what also stands out when you were talking about a lot of the injuries is there's a lot of defensive linemen that are either going to be out or limited. So where does the opportunity lie there in that defensive front seven?
There's absolutely a number of guys out, Mason being limited, and then Jordan Jefferson, not the quarterback, being out as well, and then Mekhi Wingo being out. It's going to open up a lot of opportunity for guys like Jacobian Guillory and Jalen Lee, the Florida transfer, Tyee Hill, a redshirt freshman, Bryce Langston, who's been on this roster for a little while now and hasn't done a whole lot yet. Guys like that are going to get a lot of reps here in the spring, especially on the defensive interior, to maybe, try to work their way into that rotation come preseason camp. What it does is kind of interesting because there are so many new faces on the defensive front. LSU isn't going to get a great chance to look at them on the field in the spring. That probably won't be too much of an issue, but Brian Kelly did say that, they kind of want to figure out what they've got a little bit defensively. And even if that doesn't happen on the practice field, a lot of that might be more in meetings and kind of having a good idea of who they're going to be relying on come preseason camp, and then let those competitions continue to play out as needed across the defensive front.
All right, a couple more for you. Maybe the biggest story this offseason has been, certainly the last couple of weeks, been the shuffle on the coaching staff, right, with Brian Polian going to an off-field role and then John Jancic being promoted. Wilson, I mean, it's a little odd that you struggled so much in special teams you didn't bring in a full-time special teams coordinator. So what did Brian Kelly talk about? How the roles are going to be divvied up, and do we have any more clarification there?
Absolutely. At the end of the season, Brian Kelly said that he went through all of LSU's errors and tried to basically figure out the root problem. And his takeaway was really that LSU put the ball on the ground. And that's what was, in his mind, the difference. Schematically, in terms of how LSU approached special teams, he liked a lot of what he saw. And so as he went through the interview process, he ended up going internal because he wanted to change the approach to how LSU structures its special teams coaching. But he didn't want to bring in a new one singular voice who was going to install different kinds of schemes and have that sort of same, just clear replacement to Brian Polian. And so John Jancic, while he's going to be the special teams coordinator in title and will certainly have a role in special teams, it is what Brian Kelly termed a decentralized operation. So a lot of the assistants are like Brad Davis and Mike Dimbrock are heavily involved in the blocking on PAT and field goal. And then Matt House is heavily involved in kickoff, Robert Steeples and Kerry Cooks in punt. And so a lot of sort of people chipping in. And then it also, as you pointed out, is really big that LSU can use analysts as on-field coaches during practice. And so special teams analyst Lester Erb is going to be a big component to this as well. He was already on staff a year ago as a special teams analyst, and he'll be a big piece of making sure that LSU schemes that Brian Kelly liked are the ones that they continue to use. But the way that it's coached and presented is going to be different.
What about Bob Diaco?
We didn't get a chance to talk about Diaco, and he still isn't actually listed on LSU's website just yet. So we'll have to. I want to see what his title is going to be. If he's a defensive analyst or if he's a special teams analyst. As we in our special teams conversation with Brian yesterday, Diaco didn't come up in that moment, but he could still be somebody who potentially helps with that.
Did he say how they plan to split quarterback reps?
Yes. It's sort of what we heard after the Citrus Bowl, in that they're going to be open-minded with Garrett Nussmeier, and that means that he is going to get first-team reps. At the same time, Jaden Daniels, he is clearly saying, is still the starter. He said that he, quote, earned that right to be the QB1. And Jaden Daniels, something would kind of have to happen by the sound of it. Jaden would have to take a step back, and Garrett would really have to do some extraordinary things to change the pecking order. But they're open to that idea if it were to happen. If Garrett Nussmeier just came in here and blew the doors off of everything, then they will, consider changing their thinking. But as of now, Jaden Daniels is QB1, Garrett QB2, but he's going to get the opportunity to get first-team reps here in the spring.
Good stuff. He is Wilson Alexander, the advocate. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at WHAlexander _, at WHAlexander _. Spring drills get started Thursday morning for the Tigers out on the Ponderosa. Thanks, Wilson. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.